Hello, everyone. My name is Srishti, and I am a digital transformation consultant at Hyperbots. Today, I'm delighted to have Jon Naseath as my guest. Thank you so much for taking out the time, Jon. It's so good to have you.
My pleasure. Thanks.
A little bit about Jon for our viewers. He is the CFO at Cantu Capital, and today we'll be discussing on the topic identifying anomalies in the payment terms for vendors. So, without further ado, let's get started with the first question. So, what are the payment term anomalies and why are they significant for a company's financial health?
Payment term anomalies can really be any deviation that is different from what was agreed upon with the vendor terms. Unexpected deadline changes, inconsistent discounts, discrepancies between the contract and the invoice terms. But really, I remember realizing that this is definitely intentional in many cases. Like if you think about an accounts payable team takes a strategy of stretching the payments or maybe doing payments faster so they can get discounts and different things. So there's what the contract defines, and then there's how the payments are coming in and when they're going to make the payments based on whatever strategies they're applying.
Understood. That makes sense. What are some common examples of payment term anomalies that CFOs should watch out for?
The common one is, vendors shifting from net 30 to net 45 or however long they can stretch that payment until you call out and complain. Inconsistent discounts, maybe applying discounts that maybe they shouldn't have been able to apply and assuming that they're going to get it passed through. Contract and invoice discrepancies. I helped build a whole practice at KPMG. We called it contract compliance services. And it was based on what's in the contract versus what the vendor is doing. And usually we'd come in because there was some disconnect. It wasn't fraud, but it was not fulfilling their contractual liabilities. And there's a lot of it out there. There's all sorts of fees introduced or payment structures or just things change in business over time. So you had something in the contract, they have a different opinion now, and they're going to pay based on what they want.
Yeah, and I think that is extremely interesting. Thank you for sharing that. That brings me to the next question. How can CFOs effectively detect anomalies in payment terms using technology?
Different financial software, ERP will identify a comparison between what was expected versus what you put in. The challenge there is there could be lots of variances and they might be okay. So figuring out which ones matter or not is the real issue. False positives. Different data analytics, machine learning can watch and spot patterns, and that can be very helpful from a data forensics perspective. Identifying individual vendor dashboards, as an example, can be helpful just to see how's this vendor doing, kind of your QBR style thing of what they're doing or not. And then treating your vendors like sort of like a customer from a CRM perspective, if you have a big portfolio of vendors that you're managing.
Understood. What role does regular auditing play in identifying payment terms anomalies, and how should it be conducted?
Again, this is the business we built out at KPMG is, helping companies implement their own controls and then also doing periodic audits, whether that's just an internal audit or having a third party come in to do an audit for you. So one of the big companies where I did this was Microsoft. And I worked for their procurement department while I was at KPMG, and we built out a program of auditing and review and saved them $10 million a year without really changing contracts, just tightening up these types of things we're talking about. Scheduled reviews, cross-verification, contract terms and looking for anomalies between the data, sample testing, looking for the ones that are the biggest issues, but the biggest variances that pop out there, and going and having discussions with those vendors. And then a lot of times you just get so many different vendors across these big companies. It's just kind of focusing in on the core ones that you want to partner with is critical.
Well, that is extremely helpful. How can CFOs utilize vendor feedback to identify and address payment terms anomalies?
It comes down to, there's different types of relationships with vendors, and the vendor wants to have this very trusted partnering relationship. And a lot of times the CFO needs to decide, do we want to keep them at an arm's length? And how tight you want to push them on negotiations, because a lot of times if you push them so hard on the negotiations, I'm mentioning Microsoft a couple times, but now I remember another situation where I was buying cloud services from Microsoft, and I was the VP of finance, and the CFO that I was working for really just pushed them hard against Google, competing Google and Microsoft, and got ridiculously low concessions on the contract, like low fees. And that's fine. But I've just found over time with vendors, yes, you should be aggressive and, work for the best deals you can. But then you have to, if you push them so hard, you have to be very careful and watch for them, because they're going to find ways to get that money back. And they'll usually like slowly drop little things in there. So think about it as a relationship and manage that relationship however you want to manage it, but just be aware that there's a relationship there. And whether it's totally transactional or strategic in some way, manage it accordingly.
Absolutely. And I think it's all about fostering those collaborations and relationships. That brings me to the next question. What strategies can CFOs implement to prevent payment term anomalies from occurring?
Requiring standard payment policies. Again, depending on how big you are, you can say, no, we don't do pay on delivery. We do 30 days. And really over time, you're going to develop more trust and get better payment terms with your vendors. Contractual agreements, automated processes, vendor reviews. Keep in mind, though, that some of these vendors, since I'm naming names, and I've called out Microsoft, I'll also call out Amazon then next. Hope this doesn't get me in trouble to anybody, my friends at Amazon or Microsoft. But there was a situation where we had worked with one kind of vendor manager person at Amazon and gotten some of these concessions on payment terms and on discounts and different things. And then that person left the firm, left Amazon, and they had a auditor from Amazon come in and review all that had been done and basically rejected all of those concessions we had established over a couple of years of relationships. And they forced us to pay back payments on what was there. And we weren't too happy about that, but it was actually them saying, no, we're not going to give you the next money you're owed. It was this weird relationships where we owed them money and they owed us money based on multiple things we were doing. So I used to do those audits when I was at KPMG. I couldn't complain too much, but just recognize that keep monitoring it and then be careful, because different companies can be very aggressive when they want more money.
No, absolutely. And I think it is about maintaining that transparent communication and obviously not end up in a situation like this, which is not ideal. So the objective is obviously to make like a predictive payment environment here.
And get it in writing, like document things, even if it's just as simple as an email back to that vendor manager saying, hey, per our discussion, this is what we agreed to. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. That is extremely insightful tip there. And how can Hyperbots payment AI copilot help in anomaly detection and correction?
Specifically with Hyperbots AI Copilot, payment AI Copilot, it can monitor all these things for you. So it can, a lot of times it's easier to catch things in real time and then deal with it then. And really, your vendors are going to try to stretch payments and they're going to do different things. So it can send out a response when they do. So like a recommendation engine on repeat offenders, or facilitating continuous learning, facilitating real-time alerts, all that stuff.
Understood. And that is extremely helpful. That brings me to the last question here. How can addressing payment term anomalies enhance vendor relationships and overall business performance?
Again, back when I was doing these audits, and I should also shout out Anglepoint. Anglepoint is the team we built at KPMG, and they spun off and do kind of vendor management, vendor relationship programs. The strategy we actually took was, instead of just doing audits all the time and getting money from different partners of these big companies, we tried to turn it into a relationship and say, look, you want to do business together over the long term. And so let's just make sure we have good controls in place. And to the degree that some stronger relationship could be established, they didn't need to do audits. They could trust and provide different types of periodic reporting, and really companies just want to make money together in different ways. So a lot of times I remember finding different anomaly audit findings and adding up the amounts and thinking we're going to help our client in this case get this money back. And the client, the big company that is working with another big company, some senior executive would come in and play what I used to call the relationship card and basically say, well, we'll make all that go away if we do this other type of deal and this future this is what we want to do together anyway. So let's make that go away and do this together, because we know you didn't mean to steal money from us. And so there was a lot of those types of discussions that were interesting. And I've been on both sides of those discussions. But yeah, addressing payment term anomalies, how do you want to address it? You can address them kind of point by point, but it really comes down to building a trusted relationship and how do you want to grow that together in some way, strengthening the partnerships, finding a win-win to enable cash flow management. Maybe if someone's messing with you on payment terms, tightening things up and getting the money back some other way. I'll tell you the last comment there. Everyone's afraid of public reporting or press releases, right? So I see some press releases around so and so had this type of penalty payment from this other company, and whatever dollar amount it is, it's usually very, very small compared to the type of anomaly errors and issues that companies are negotiating every day. Like 10x the size of what gets reported publicly. So I always found that interesting. And this is just a natural part of actually managing procurement and managing these vendor relationships is there everyone's trying to make a buck. You have to stay on top of it or you'll totally get taken advantage of if you're not using a tool. So I like the idea of an AI. I think Hyperbots has great solutions for it because if you're not monitoring these things, or if you just have some like junior AP clerk managing your vendors, they're going to take advantage of you.
Absolutely. I know those were extremely helpful tips over there. And thank you so much for sharing your insights from your industry experience. It was extremely interesting to know about what's on the other side of the things as well. So thank you so much. So that brings me to the end of today's discussion. Thank you again for joining us and sharing your insights. Also, big thanks to our viewers. I'll see you around. Have a good day. Bye-bye.